Welcome to our final feedback video for this run of the course. Finally, we're back in the studio together.
Welcome back from Bali.
Yeah, thanks, and welcome back from Antarctica, New York, and
Bali as well.
oh yeah, and Bali. Yeah,
I really got around last week.
I like those seals.
Yeah. Good.
Yeah.
Yep.
Look, there's been some amazing stuff once again this week. Some really sort of learners talking about valuing the course.
Yeah.
Really getting a lot of value out of it and really enjoying experiencing all of the different exercises, but also that sense of community that forms. And that's always one of the best parts, really seeing.
Learning from and encouraging each other as well, especially for the repeat learners as well, who've sort of come back and found a lot more value from going into these things in a lot more depth than previously.
Definitely, yeah. And some learners saying that mindfulness just really sort of wakes us up, really noticing that as we develop that self-awareness, as we pay attention to what's happening around us and what's happening on a deeper level, we really start to wake up and sometimes see things that we hadn't noticed before.
Things going on in the background of our awareness that we may not have seen before, but perhaps we notice them now.
Which suddenly become obvious, but perhaps we hadn't noticed them before. Kind of like that study with the gorilla and the basketballs.
Yeah.
Remember that famous study where people watching the basketball and just don't notice the person in the gorilla suit go through?
Most people don't notice the gorilla.
Most people don't notice. Yeah.
And of course, we do need to recognise that there is the gorilla within, and to be more aware of that is perhaps a very useful thing to do. Now, some really interesting things in terms of these things like values and being true to ourselves, and the awareness that mindfulness brings, that when we act in accordance with our values, or that we actually feel very differently to when we don't. When we perhaps, don't act in accordance with our core values and so on, that it leads to a kind of effect mentally, physically, and this has become quite apparent to a number of our learners.
That's great, isn't it? It's an interesting thing to pay attention to. I mean, mindfulness helps us to listen to ourselves and identify what are our values to start with. But then, if we do something that's out of line or out of integrity for us, it feels uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And I think we'd often miss that, wouldn't we? If we're just reacting to everything, if we're an automatic pilot, trying to multitask our way through life, you're not going to notice that. But when we start to bring some mindfulness.
Yeah. And we might just sort of have a sense of, well, I'm not feeling good, or I'm not feeling at ease with myself, or my mind's not at peace. We might get a bit more of a sense of what's behind that. But of course, as we've said many times, the point is not to criticise and judge even that, but to notice it and perhaps to learn from it, to be informed by that insight.
Yes. And of course, there's a lot of research showing that mindfulness can benefit decision-making processes, activating parts of the brain that help us to make more conscious, rational decisions where we're perhaps aware of all of those cognitive biases, like the sunk cost bias you talked about last week, anchoring and confirmation biases. So once we start to slow down a little bit and respond rather than react to things, but also become aware of our own emotional state and mindsets and aware of those cognitive biases, we can make much better decisions, whether that's in business or just in day-to-day life.
Yeah, so really being aware of the things that are influencing those decisions. And again, this is the kind of stuff that's happening in the background. Yeah, interesting, like words like intuition and conscience. Intuition means like, Latin derivation of like sight, like a deep insight, seeing deeply into something. And conscience, con as in to connect with, join with, and science, which is a word for knowledge. So to connect with a kind of an inner knowledge. And so this is not like a value system outside ourselves. It's actually connecting with the value system inside ourselves. And that's why I think like things like compassion and so on, generosity or magnanimity, actually accord with how we're programmed innately. But a lot of other things get in the way of that in our upbringing and experience through life.
That's right. Well, there are all those fascinating studies showing that babies as young as 2 months old spontaneously show compassion and empathy, and I mean it is really part of our hardwiring, isn't it?
Yes, that's right.
And perhaps, as you said, things get in the way of that.
And some of the learners have been noticing too how that adversity and difficulty teaches us a lot, and like those great lines from Shakespeare, "Sweet are the uses of adversity, which like a toad ugly and venomous wears a precious jewel in its head." And it's like, and he goes on to say that this is no flattery. These are counsellors that feelingly persuade me what I am. So in a sense, the adversity can teach us a lot about ourselves if we pay attention to it rather than turn away from it. If we turn away from it, we don't learn, we don't understand, we don't see. But if we turn to it, that potential is there.
I see it a lot in my private practice, people whose lives have been just on a track for them, and everything's worked out for them, but then all of a sudden they failed an exam or they failed some kind of, had some kind of setback or an illness, and that's obviously, and I guess those famous examples of people having heart attacks and stopping and saying, hang on, what's my life about and how am I living and what do I really want to live like this? And I think that can be a very important question to ask.
I was really struck by those the Thai soccer players caught in that cave for all that time. And of course their coach had been a Buddhist monk for a number of years and taught the kids meditation. And they spent a lot of time in that cave while they were waiting to be found, meditating.
That was a stroke of luck, wasn't it? Just stuck in there with an ex-monk who's like spent his life meditating in caves. He's like, yeah, guys, I've got an idea.
Yeah, because if they didn't stay grounded, their minds could have gone to some very unhelpful places. And they came out of that extraordinarily well, more resilient than when they went into that cave. I think it's an incredible story of insight and wisdom in many ways.
Yeah, definitely. Once we're familiar with our values as well, then there are goals that we can set for ourselves. And to approach mindfully goal setting and goal achievement, I think is a pretty important topic. Yeah, so in some of the acceptance commitment therapy literature, they talk about values being directions that we head in, and then goals being sort of waypoints along the way. If we value education, we might finish school and go and get a university degree and continue learning through life. If we value relationships, we might find a partner, get married, have kids, things like that.
Yeah.
But I think it's also important to not hold on too tightly to those goals. We might want to have them as an aspiration, something that we're heading towards. But mindfulness gives us the ability to be flexible and to let go if we need to pivot, or head in a different direction if that goal. If once we start to head towards it, we realise, actually, maybe that's not really the most important thing for me.
Yeah, like one student doing postgraduate training, and was training in an area that really was not, their heart was not singing. In fact, quite the opposite. And but kept on going, and this is part of the sunk cost bias. Kept on going, despite the fact that every fibre in their being was saying, "Step away, do something different." And it's like we forget all of a sudden the goal, I have to attain this qualification, but we've totally become ungrounded in what is actually giving us those signposts along the way.
So to focus on the outside rather than still listening to what, is this in integrity? Does this feel right for me?
And a number of learners have said that about, the sunk cost bias and learning to let go, leave behind something that is really not where they want to invest time and energy, which has been a great insight.
Such an important thing to be able to do.
Yeah. The choiceless awareness practice.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, isn't it? It brings up a lot for people. Some people really loved it and found it was a very beautiful experience of just sitting and being. Kind of like what I did a little bit as a kid, and I guess these days people do it less and less. But, this idea of just sitting and being, waiting for a bus or being out in nature or just taking a moment to not do anything, not to figure anything out, not to jump on a phone, but just to be. And the choiceless awareness gives us an experience of that, so that we can include everything in the practice and allow everything just to be as it is, which there's a profound relaxation that comes actually when we allow everything to be as it is and not try to block anything out. Others found it quite challenging, actually.
Yeah, and the mind sort of saying, well, what do I focus on?
Yeah.
And if there's choiceless awareness, it's just we're noticing the mind jumping around, having a conversation with itself about what do I focus on, and you just let that come and go, like almost like watching a dog that's got a ball in its mouth, and rather than running around trying to chase the dog, is just let the dog run with the ball, but you just sit on the park bench, and then eventually, if you're lucky, the dog comes up and drops the ball at your feet. But it is quite a challenging practice, and that's why we don't introduce it early on, because the grounding of attention with a resting point is a good place to start.
Definitely. People eating more mindfully too, Craig.
Yeah. I mean, all these simple mundane things, a simple enjoyment of those things, but also being more in touch with our body and mind. And a number of learners have been finding that and also with mindful movement as well.
Indeed, yes. One of our learners talking about archery being a mindfulness practice. And of course, if we bring mindfulness to our movement, we just start to move in ways that actually serve the body rather than sort of, pushing too hard in a yoga class or doing exercise that's bad for the body. We can start to listen and actually notice, okay, this is what my body's capable of right now, what it needs.
Yeah. And reducing the preoccupation with the outcome and just coming back to the moment in the process.
Yeah, indeed. So that's about it from us for this run. Yeah. Once again, we'd just really like to thank the team, everybody behind the scenes that, helps to put this course together.
Yeah.
Yeah, moderators and everybody else. Remind learners to upgrade. If you want to continue to have access to all of the materials from this course, you can upgrade and that'll let you have access to that forever. Our next course starts on October 1st, so please feel free to sign up. You can sign up for that already. And mention it to others. If you've enjoyed doing this course, then feel free to, of course, just recommend it to other people, but also to rate and review us on socials, and we'll provide some links for you to be able to do that.
Good. Now we're going to teleport to somewhere else that's very interesting, and we'll see you if you do the next course next time.
I want to be somewhere warm. Somewhere warm.